Ladies and gentlemen, James Lane here. This is episode 70, ladies and gentlemen, of the American Reveille Podcast. And we've got today Gina and the Jews 3, the return of the Gentile. just kidding. We're not going to call it the return of the Gentile, but, figured we'd do it because it's the third, like the Empire Strikes Back is the second. Okay, anyway, you get the point. Listen, we're going to cover the latest from Gina Carano. We're going to cover, just for a couple minutes here, what she had to say. We're going to kind of put it all together. The first and the second, Gina and the Jews, we were kind of covering ongoing news of what was happening after Disney and Lucas film fired her. But now she's teamed up with a very well-known Jew, Ben Shapiro, to make some movies. That's going to be interesting. We're going to pull it together. But most importantly, we're going to finish our history lesson. We're going to finish our history lesson with this episode. We're going to go through from Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, all the way through the Voyage of St. Louis. And we're going to educate the lefties and the ignorant folks out there just exactly what the Jews had to go through and how similar certain circumstances are to today. Further, letting everybody know that Gina was right and the entire woke world was wrong. Folks, stay tuned. We'll wrap it up with this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 70 of the American Reveille Podcast. If you've been watching a while, you know I'm James Lane. If you haven't been watching a while, you're probably not watching this at all since I'm shadow banned as hell. Man, oh man, I was looking at the numbers and the traffic's going out, but nothing's coming in. And there's somebody at big tech with their finger on the button going, I know this guy was getting a couple thousand views a few weeks ago. I think 60 sounds about right. Well, I'm going to just let you guys know that they can't smoke us out. You see, we're going to keep making content. We're going to keep building this empire. We're going to keep finding solutions until we find the real solution, until we find the path through. You see, there's no quit in the American Reveille. In fact, there's no quit in a real American in general. And they're going to find that out the hard way with me, with my team, with the American Reveille Podcast and the American Reveille LLC. Folks, we got some exciting stuff coming up. We're going to be making some new social media pages for some strategic research. Let's just put it like that. I'll let you know what that is down the road. We've talked about the street teams. We've talked about some of the other stuff. We're going to have an interesting interview coming up pretty soon. An author of a book that is going to be pretty influential, in my opinion. That's not this episode. That'll be another episode. I'm actually doing the interview with the guy today. We'll record it. I'll get everything out there within the next couple days. I think you're going to really like it. Listen, Gina Carano, right? Oh, and by the way, I'm going to put it like this. The camera, now that I've upgraded my set, is up this way. And I'm used to looking straight, right? I need to get a mirror that kind of goes up. So if you see my eyes, see, I'm looking right now at you. But if you see me kind of looking down a little, it's out of habit. It's not that I'm trying to look down. I'm trying to actually look at you, but just bear with me. Bear with me. I'll readjust to the new heights, get some stuff put in that helps me look, just like when you're going to take a piss in a urinal. And this is for the guys out there. If you're going to go take a piss in the urinal and they have like the little sticker in there, where it's supposed to psychologically help you pee in the toilet and not pee all over the floor. So people don't want to come cut your head off for pissing all over the bathroom. We need to get one of those for my camera. Just put it up there. So not only do I look directly at the camera, but for some reason I keep having to replace it because I keep peeing on it. I don't know why. Anyway, I know that wasn't funny whatsoever. I tried. Deal with it. Gina Carano, she releases her first statement since being fired from The Mandalorian, working with Ben Shapiro to make some movies. Listen, Gina deserves the best. She deserves a chance. She didn't deserve to get canceled. So I'm in full support of whatever she does. So we wish her nothing but success. How about that? We'll just say that. We wish her nothing but success. we're a growing business. I don't have any misconceptions of anything. Our plans were to do things like what Ben Shapiro wanted to do with movies and different things like that for a long time. The truth of the matter is this: they've got a lot more money than us. All right. So even if we had an idea first or this or that, doesn't matter. Doesn't work like that. They got the money. They go in there. They make it happen. Plain and simple. So what do? We got to catch up. We got to come up with our own methods. We got to differentiate the American Reveille from the Daily Wire and from other places like that. And I think as we go, you'll see how interesting it gets because we have some major plans, folks. Look at that face. Look at Gina Carano. Very, very attractive, olive-skinned, Italian-looking American woman. What could I say? Dark hair, dark features, dark skin. Oh my. Gina Carano. All right. She's broken her silence. We're reading now, ladies and gentlemen. This is from the MMA Fighter. All right. MMAfighting.com from Damon Martin. All right. I don't know if a lot of you know, but Gina Carano is not only beautiful, she'll kick your ass. Gina Carano's broken her silence in the wake of being fired from The Mandalorian, but she didn't issue an apology or an explanation for social media posts. No, her former employers at Lucasfilm, they called these posts abhorrent. We've talked about these posts, right, guys? We talked about her putting the reference out there that people on the left are treating people on the right like the Nazis treated people before the Holocaust. She's talked about voting ID. She's talked about a couple of things, and there's nothing she said that we don't really agree with here at the American Reveille. So I'm sorry, woke oligarchs out there, woke overlords, woke Nazis out there. That's what you are, you lefties. You're the Nazis. You're the woke Nazis. All right. We need to come up with a new word. We need to call them Watsies. W-A-Z-I-S. The woke Nazis. That's what the left is. Listen. She didn't post anything wrong. It's just that everybody's such a little coward, such a little wimp, such a little baby that their ears, they can't have, oh, that hurt. It hurt my ear. You said something from history that was true. How dare you? How dare you? How dare you? You beautiful, beautiful woman. You intimidate all of us lefties because you're strong and powerful and successful in a way we can never be. So we have to destroy you to make ourselves feel better. This is some really basic psychological baby bullshit, guys. It really is. All right. I'm sure you've noticed the patterns by now. We're going to keep reading. Instead, the 38-year-old former mixed martial art. She's 38. Jesus. The 38-year-old former mixed martial artist announced a new project where she's teaming up with conservative firebrand Ben Shapiro and his website, The Daily Wire, to produce and star in a new film project. Doesn't the word firebrand kind of feel like a female word? I'm not trying. Listen. All right. Don't give me any crap. All right. Words can apply to anybody, to anything. We get it. All right. It's 2021. But firebrand, it sounds like you'd give it to like a woman who was kicking the crap out of all the dudes and something. Right. This 38-year-old firebrand, you might say it about Gina Carano, but Ben Shapiro. I know they called Matt Gaetz a firebrand before, too, and I took issue with the same thing because it just makes them sound more feminine, in my opinion. Ben Shapiro, the 38-year-old firebrand. I know he's not 38, all right? I know that we're referring to Gina Carano when I say 38. I'm just making stuff up, all right? That's how it works. That's how imagination works. That's how you do it on the fly, guys. You got to make stuff up. You got to improvise. You got to be able to talk. All right. So don't take my crap out of context and take a crap on our page here. All right. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of people putting fake reviews in and taking a crap on our page. You got to understand what a joke is. All right. All right. Jokes are funny. Pull the stick out of your butt, lefties. Pull it right out. Pull that stick out. Don't sniff it. All right. I know you lefties like to sniff the stick. Just put the stick down. All right. And relax. Just let it happen. Take a joke. Have a laugh. Dumbasses. They're going to produce and make these new films. She's going to star in these films. It'll be interesting. I said it yesterday. I'd like to see a conservative sci-fi film. All right. Kind of like Firefly, but more conservative. I don't know. you'll have to let me know how you would make that happen in the comments section below. Quote, "The Daily Wire is helping make one of my dreams to develop and produce my own film come true," Carano said in a statement released at Deadline. "I cried out, and my prayer was answered. I'm sending out a direct message of hope to everyone living in fear of cancellation by the totalitarian mob. I've also only just begun using my voice, which is now freer than ever before, and I hope it inspires others to do the same. They can't cancel us if we don't let them." I've said that. Many of us have said that. If we all come together and open our mouths, they will never be able to shut them. Carano came under fire earlier this week after posting several messages to her Instagram account that included one particular image that compared the plight of conservatives in America to Jews who were slaughtered during the Holocaust in Nazi Germany. And like I said in the last video, what does it take to make this similar? Do we have to wait to get slaughtered? And then the reference is okay after, well, you know, after Nancy Pelosi found that black magic marker, sniffed it a little too much, and then wrote that little Hitler mustache on her face, and it just felt oh so good, she decided to seize power and murder 13 million conservatives before anyone stopped her. I'm not saying that happened. I'm not saying she did it. It's a joke. It's a hypothetical. Screw off if you take it serious, but the concept behind it is serious. Let's say she did that. Let's say she killed 13 million conservatives. Then do we get to make the reference? Because most of the stuff, all right, under the guise of COVID and other things, before the Nazis made their laws and basically started truly labeling the Jews, not just secretly before. It happened in 1933, but for years before that, the Jews were being prejudiced against. They were being oppressed, all right? They had time to escape. They tried to do different things. Stuff happened. We're going to talk about some of that stuff today. But you have to understand that there's not much of a difference between what happened before 1933 and what's happening right now. So what does it take? Do we have to be murdered for the reference? Like after that in 2050, when somebody makes a Holocaust reference and then compares them to 2021 or 2025, who knows what's going to happen? Are they going to say, well, I mean, yeah, I don't know which one was worse, but they were both pretty bad. Or, you know, are they going to say something else? Who knows? Listen, you got to just understand. This word policing, this word smithing, this word war, it's going a little too far. And you saw that in the impeachment. You saw that Trump was acquitted. Why was he acquitted? He wasn't just acquitted because it was the right thing to do and because it was the constitutional thing to do. He was also acquitted because the left is terrified. All right. They were going to bring in witnesses. The right called their bluff. So let's bring them all in. Let's bring hundreds of people. Let's bring Nancy Pelosi. And what did they know about what was happening at the Capitol riots? Here, let me play you this video of all the times the left were hypocrites. Now, what was that? Huh? You want to go? You want to go? And the left did what? They backed the F down. They sat down. They shut up. They acquitted Donald Trump. All right. They're not going to win this. They're not. But don't you think for 1 minute that this game didn't go just like that. That's exactly how it went. All right. That's exactly what is going on. And that is exactly what we're preventing. We're trying to prevent this from escalating into a situation like what happened to the Jews. But man, you know, it looks like a dog. It barks like a dog. It wags its tail. It's hairy. It's smelly. Unless your ex-husband has a tail, it's a friggin' dog. All right. This stuff doesn't lead to anything good. She said this, all right? This is what she said. Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. And because history is edited, most people today don't realize that you get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews. The government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from hating someone for their political views? It's not. And we've proved it through history. That's why we've put this little series together, Gina and the Jews 1, 2, and 3. And in 1 and 2, we give you a little update in the beginning, and then we fill you in on the Jewish history. And this one's no different. It's going to finish this series from the Encyclopedia of Jewish History, all right, from the Museum of the Holocaust. This is where it's coming from. This is straight from the horse's mouth, ladies and gentlemen, all right, straight from the horse's mouth. We need to show the history. They can't take it down. They can't censor it. I mean, they can censor it. But we at least have facts on our side. We can fight it at this point when we say it, all right? Look, Lucasfilm, which is owned by Disney, later released a statement that confirmed, all right? They confirmed Carano was no longer employed with the studio in any way whatsoever. The statement called Carano's social media post unacceptable, and they sought to cut ties with you. What the hell was so unacceptable about it? We still haven't figured that out yet. Nothing at all was unacceptable about what she said. They are persecuting her before she becomes powerful against them, before she becomes a weapon of free speech. And what did they do when they struck her down? They made her rise and become more powerful than ever before. Plain and simple. Carano had come under fire previously for separate posts, all right? She came under fire for mocking gender pronouns, all right? She apologized, and, we don't have to keep we've talked about the rest of this. We've talked about all of this stuff, all right? We know she's going over to the Daily Wire. We know all that good stuff. We know Pedro, the guy she works with, the other actor, he's compared the right to Nazis for years. For years, no problem. It's a double standard. It's hypocrisy. It's two separate sets of definitions. One has to have the woke dictionary to sift through all of the nonsense and bullshit. Ladies and gentlemen, they don't know their history, or either that or they know it so well that they know how to manipulate it perfectly. And I almost think it's that. I almost think that they're much smarter than we give them credit for. So while we bicker with each other about the definition of racist, they take over the country and eventually the world. But knowledge is power. Truth is power. Truth will set us free, and truth is the only thing that can stop us. All right? Well, stop them. Stop us, I guess, as humans from destroying ourselves, but stop them from taking over everything we know and love and changing it for the worse forever, creating a futuristic ghetto out of the entire country. And that's not a knock at black people or anything like that. I'm using the generic gray term ghetto, all right? Because there's been plenty of ghettos for all different races and religions throughout history. I'm talking about a digital ghetto. A nationwide, worldwide digital ghetto for those who don't think socialist, ladies and gentlemen, for those who don't have the socialist brain. Big Brother, Orwell 1984, it's all here. It's all here, ladies and gentlemen. So we need to go back. We need to go back in time to a night that Arnold Schwarzenegger knows nothing about, but loves to make money off of. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the night of broken glass. Kristallnacht. Okay, the night of broken glass. This was a horrible, horrible thing that happened for the Jewish people. All right. Now, remember, they're going through right now and mass censoring us. This stuff happened, all right, almost 100 years ago now. Think about that. Almost 100 years ago. They didn't have the technology, all right? So when they censor us digitally and we say, oh, this is nothing like what happened to the Jews, this would be exactly what was happening to the Jews if we had that technology back then, but we didn't. So it was done in different ways. So don't think for 1 second that a variation of this type of stuff isn't happening right now. The Night of Broken Glass, folks, the Holocaust Encyclopedia. This is from the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. Let's read. On the night of November 9th through 10th, 1938, the Nazi regime coordinated a wave of anti-Semitic violence in Nazi Germany. This became known as Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass. It was named for the shattered glass from store windows that littered the streets after the violence. The violence was supposed to look like an unplanned outburst of anger against the Jews, but in fact, Nazi leaders actively coordinated it with Adolf Hitler's support. On the night of November 9th, they ordered members of the Nazi Party's paramilitaries, the SS and SA, and the Hitler Youth, those are children, to attack the Jewish communities. Let me ask you a question. We had a year almost of burning down our cities, right? We're talking Antifa, Black Lives Matter, all these groups burning down the cities, burning them down, killing people, murdering people, raping people. A year, not a night, not 2 nights, not a weekend, not a fortnight, not a 77. No, a year, a long ass time with no accountability whatsoever. No accountability. How is that different? Especially when anybody from the right that got in their way were destroyed, canceled, censored, beaten, broken, or battered. How? How is that? It's not. It's not different, you dumb lefties. It's not. In the hours and days that followed organized groups of Nazis, and if you think that political groups had nothing to do with the violence, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. In the hours and days that followed, organized groups of Nazis wreaked havoc on Jewish life in Nazi Germany. They burned hundreds of synagogues. They vandalized thousands of Jewish-owned businesses, shattering the glass in storefronts. They damaged Jewish cemeteries and homes. Nazi leaders told the police and fire brigades to ignore the attacks. Police forces did not protect the Jews or their property. Fire brigades did not put out the fires in synagogues. Hundreds of Jews died during Kristallnacht and its aftermath. Again, how is it different? Why? Because there's a couple dozen in the variation. One happened on a night, one happened over a year. What's different? How about the Jews that were rounded up in New York? Oh, you didn't hear about that? Why don't you go look, lefties? Why don't you go look at your Jesus Christ up there in New York, Governor Cuomo, who's now backpedaling and falling from grace as they reveal the truth, as his leftist allies become his leftist enemies and opponents and turn on him. Whether it was their consciences, whether it was because they want out of the lies, whether it's because they didn't want to go down with the ship, Cuomo is sinking rapidly. He attacked the Jews up there, wouldn't let them practice, condemned and closed synagogues, condemned and closed churches. How is this any different? Burned. How many places were burned? Ladies and gentlemen, burned. And when the police tried to go into Chaz in Seattle, when the police tried to help in Portland, when the police tried to help everywhere, their hands were tied. They were cut off at the knees. Ladies and gentlemen, the police did not help either. How is that different than this? It's not. Wake up. The next morning, the Nazi regime ordered the police to arrest 30,000 German Jewish men. These men had not committed any crime. The police arrested them simply for being Jewish. They were sent to such concentration camps as Dachau and Buchenwald. The arrest shocked and terrified Jewish families and communities. The Nazi authorities released many of these men if families could prove they had plans to leave Germany. Other men died in these camps. Listen, we aren't there yet, right? Now, they had the laws coming through in New York. They had all these things talking about camps, COVID camps, right? Nobody arrested 30,000 Jews, although hundreds were arrested after the Capitol riots, a very big difference than anyone arrested during all of the riots that went on for about a year. Nothing like that. But if that paragraph right below there, right, that paragraph that says they were sent to concentration camps haven't happened yet, it hasn't come to fruition, we're like 2 paragraphs above it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not far from that. And if you read in there, it says the arrest shocked and terrified Jewish families. How many people, if you woke up tomorrow and found out 30,000 Republicans were arrested for shits and giggles, you would be shocked and terrified. And then we would end up in this paragraph. It's not as far off as people think. All right. And warning people that their actions are stupid and they're acting like Nazis for persecuting anybody is not a bad thing. It should wake those people up. It should remind those people what they're doing. It should tell the Nancy Pelosi's and Chuck Schumer's of the world, the Joe Bidens of the world, to take a good, hard look in the mirror. But instead, we cancel those voices that are supposed to check the power. And the power grows exponentially and consumes everything in its path. The night of broken glass was an important turning point for Germany's Jews. Afterwards, many Jews concluded there was no future for them in Germany. All right, not in Nazi Germany. That was the blow, the final blow to the morale, ladies and gentlemen. The key dates were November 7th, 1930 date, the catalyst for Kristallnacht. Herschel Grinspan, all right, shoots Ernst von Roth, all right, Ernst von Roth. Grinspan is a 17-year-old Polish-German Jew living in Paris. Von Roth is a minor German diplomat posted to the German embassy in Paris. Grinspan, he apparently acts out of despair over the fate of his parents, whom the Nazi regime had expelled from Germany to Poland. The Nazis used the shooting to incite anti-Semitic fervor. All right, let me explain something to you. I want to explain to you how that is similar to what's happening today, all right? I don't give a crap what the left says about this. They've been not showing my videos anyway because they're telling the exact damn truth. I want you to remember I am of Jewish heritage. I want you to remember I have a history degree. I want you to remember I'm well read on this stuff. All right. I know what I'm talking about, and we're reading from a reputable source. All right. So this guy shoots this other guy, and then the German Nazis use it. They use it as a catalyst. They use it to incite fervor, to incite violence. All right. We had riots all summer, murders, rapes, death, drugs, destruction, fires, stuff we haven't seen in this country in decades, stuff that actually blows away anything we've seen in this country, stuff we would never expect to see in our lifetime. Nothing, crickets, no news, no, the government did nothing, the freaking local governments did nothing, the news never talked about it. The right was just a bunch of liars because they controlled the narrative, right? A bunch of crap. But this incident, this unforgivable, horrible incident happens at the Capitol, okay? We don't support what happened at the Capitol, all right? So don't use this against me. I want you to know the truth, though. What happened after that? Biden, the left, Pelosi, all those people, they used that incident to incite anti-right-wing fervor, all right? They did. And if they didn't, we would be calling witnesses for an impeachment right now. All right? Plain and simple. But we weren't. We're not. There was an acquittal. All right? Because God forbid the world would have to see the truth about these high-level Democrats. The Nazis used the shooting to incite anti-Semitic fervor, and the left, the Democrats, Joe Biden, the president of the United States of America, he used the Capitol riot to incite anti-right-wing fervor. All right. They claim that Grinspan didn't act alone. He was part of a wider Jewish conspiracy against Germany. Listen, they say that the people at the Capitol riot did not act alone. They say it's part of a wider conspiracy where 75 to 80 million Americans need to be re-educated, are possibly terrorists, are possibly trying to overthrow the government. Ladies and gentlemen, how is this any different? Again, how is this any different? It's not. It's not. All right? 1938, Goebbels instigates Kristallnacht. That's them working together. 1938, November 15th, the Americans condemn Kristallnacht. All right. The American newspaper headlines condemn the violence. At a press conference, U.S. President FDR, he denounces the anti-Semitic attack. In an official statement, he writes, "I myself could scarcely believe that such things could occur in the 20th century civilization." The president recalls the U.S. ambassador to Germany. Listen. Jordan Peterson says something that I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something about how if you're going to be in a position where you have to protect people, right? If you're going to be in a position where you have to be protecting people, taking care of people, people rely on you for their safety, for the safety of their children, for their lives, for their country, then you have to be capable of imagining all the horrors and evils of this world, capable of doing them, capable of knowing them, smelling them, tasting them, feeling them. Because if you're going to stop evil, how could you ever see it coming if you don't know evil? Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've danced with the devil a few times in my life. I'm not perfect. I have a very checkered past that one day we'll talk plenty about. And in fact, if you guys want to know a lot of my past and childhood, the first 10 episodes of this podcast, way back last April or March or whenever it was when I started doing this, you can find that out if you're really that interested about me. I was trying to figure out what to do with the first 10 episodes there. So there's a lot of info about me, but I've walked bad paths. All right. I've done bad things. All right. Nobody's perfect. Nobody is perfect. All right. But I've also done many good things. But because of the bad things that I used to regret, I used to have a lot of regrets for the dog I was once upon a time. But now that I'm a shepherd, I can smell the bad. I can taste the evil. I know when it's coming because I know it because it's slightly a part of me. It's inside everybody. There's the balance, the good and evil, ladies and gentlemen, the balance between good and evil that lives within us all. You can tap into it. All right. Not a lot of people like to, not a lot of people want to, but how do you know that the wolves are on the edge of your property if you yourself aren't a wolf and understand and hear the howls, ladies and gentlemen? Plain and simple. The people that are being canceled for crying wolf are all going to be sorely missed when the wolves attack. All right. When the left, when groups, when these disgusting anti-American groups keep attacking and everybody goes, I didn't know. I didn't expect them to put us. How could they arrest 30,000 Republicans? Well, how is this happening? What is this? What is going on? You're going to miss those people who cried wolf at that point, ladies and gentlemen. And that point could come. I'm not saying it will come, but it could come. If people don't open their mouths, if people don't do anything about it. I want to read to you about the Evian Conference, all right? The Evian Conference. Between 1933, all right, and 1941, the Nazis aimed to make Germany Judenrein, cleansed of Jews, by making life so difficult for them that they'd be forced to leave the country. All right, think about this. They weren't necessarily killing everybody with concentration camps at this point. It was going on, right? It eventually started. But listen, they made things so miserable that they'd leave the country. What happens when they cancel everybody on the right? When we can't go to the bank, when we can't get groceries, when we can't get clean water or clothes, when the stores won't allow us to purchase anything, when we can't travel, what's going to happen? Many of us are going to want to leave. It'll be the plan. Cleanse America from the right. That could happen. Is it happening? Can I say it is? No, I can't say it is. But could it? Of course it could. So again, how can you cancel people for talking about history? All right. They're making things increasingly more difficult to people who don't agree with the left-wing ideology. And you know what their response is on the left? We don't care. That's what their response is. We don't care. We're right. You're wrong. And your beliefs need to go away. And you need to believe what we believe or else we'll make you. That's where we're at right now. All right. It only gets worse from here if you don't open your mouth. By 1938, about 150,000 German Jews, 1 in 4, had already fled the country. After Germany annexed Austria in March 1938, however, an additional 185,000 Jews were brought under Nazi rule. All right. You weren't even safe in other countries, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to think about this, too. I want you to make this weird comparison in your head. When you look at a map of Europe, all right, it's like a bunch of states put together in the United States of America. And you have to remember that lots of our states are the size of countries outside of the U.S., right? So Germany, Austria, all these little countries grouped together, you're looking at like a few different states there, smaller than like half the size of Texas. It's not very big, right? So imagine if New York starts putting Republicans in concentration camps. Let's use our imagination. And then they flee. They flee. All right. 100,000 Jews, not even Jews. Let's say people on the right. Excuse me. Let's say Republicans. And let's say they flee and they go to North Carolina. But let's say North Carolina is sucked into the get rid of the right-wing movement by this woke nonsense. Let's say that all their executives, everybody's put hostage to join the woke movement at that point, and the government of North Carolina does. Well, all the Jews in North Carolina, I keep saying Jews, sorry about that, all of the Republicans, all of the people on the right, libertarians, whatever, in North Carolina, they're going to get thrown into the batch of persecution again. So there's no running away. That's what they're saying. All right. People at that point were like, oh, thank God that's only happening in Germany. And then bam, Hitler takes Austria. And now all of those folks over there, all those people that thought they were safe are no longer safe. Many Jews were unable to find countries willing to take them in. Many German and Austrian Jews, and think about that. You've got many people on the right here looking for other companies, other businesses, other places to take them in, help them make a livelihood, bring them back from obscurity after they've been canceled, and nobody's willing to help. No lawyers, no server farm. Where's Parler, ladies and gentlemen? Many Jews were unable to find countries willing to take them in. Many platforms were unable to find companies to host their servers. Boom, same thing, all right? Different flavor, different year. It's 100 years later, different tech. The relationship makes sense, ladies and gentlemen. Many German and Austrian Jews tried to go to the United States but could not obtain the visas needed to enter. Even though news of the violent pogroms of November 1938 were widely reported, Americans remained reluctant to welcome Jewish refugees. In the midst of the Great Depression, many Americans believed that refugees would compete with them for jobs and overburden social programs set up to assist the needy. Congress had set up immigration quotas in 1924 that limited the number of immigrants and discriminated against groups considered racially and ethnically undesirable. All right. These quotas remained in place even after FDR, responding to mounting political pressure, called for an international conference to address the refugee program. By the way, guys, when they talk about parties doing different things and switching and these people back then, right? The people in charge that didn't let the refugees in, those were Democrats back then, okay? Those were Democrats back then, not wanting to help the Jews. And I wonder why nothing has happened to anti-Semitic Congress folks that are part of the left, to the anti-Semitic left-wing politicians out there. I wonder why nothing's happened. They weren't helping the Jews in 1924, and they're not helping the Jews now. So if you're Jewish, maybe you should reevaluate what party you believe in, who you stand with. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying that the Republican Party is the best party. We need to gut it out and make it the party of MAGA once again. All right? Those people need to be voted out. And we need to rejuvenate the party. It's already got an organizational structure. We can cleanse it. We can make it good again. All right? We can vote out the bad people and bring in the good people. All right? There's a lot of idiots that want to start a new party out there. You let me know when you get $1 trillion together to compete. All right? And then we'll start a new party. But until then, we have to refocus our efforts on the right. All right? And when you look at this, back then, the people on the left that call for all the people on the right to basically be exiled digitally and eventually physically, this same party is the party that discriminated against the Jews, that enslaved the African Americans, the blacks, that hurt this country, hurt minorities, hurt the impoverished, all under the guise of helping them so they could line their pockets and remain in political power. It's really an ingenious and disgusting, evil operation that the Democrats are running. It really is. In the summer of 1938, delegates from 32 countries met at the French resort of Evian. Roosevelt chose not to send a high-level official such as the Secretary of State such as the Secretary of State to Evian. Instead, Myron C. Taylor, a businessman and close friend of Roosevelt's, represented the U.S. at the conference. It's kind of funny how Trump wouldn't use politicians sometimes, and they'd call him a piece of crap. But Roosevelt, the left-wing darling, their baby, their hero, their Captain America, he used to do crap like that all the time. It's kind of funny. You know, Trump, he's much more of a centrist and much more of somebody who meets in the middle than anybody ever could imagine. He just really is. He just really was. And people find that as the history books are written. They really will. During the 9-day meeting, delegate after delegate rose to express sympathy for the refugees, but most countries, including the United States and Britain, offered excuses for not letting in more Jews. Responding to Evian, the German government was able to state with great pleasure how astounding it was that foreign countries criticized Germany for the treatment of Jews, but none of them wanted to open their doors to them when the opportunity offered. This kind of hypocritical talk that Hitler would bring up, this kind of smartass, this rubbing people's faces and stuff. I don't know if you've noticed, but the left does that. All right. They do the same thing Hitler did. Hitler used to laugh openly, publicly, demean and degrade other countries and laugh at them for not coming in, not being able to do anything about it. All right. And the left does that to people, places, and countries today. All right. Plain and simple. So again, what's different? Why is Gina in trouble? She shouldn't be canceled at all. You know what's sad? What's in trouble? What's in trouble is history, the memory, the collective memory of the human race. Because so many people are dumb and want to click a box all day, look at a phone, all right? And our government recognized that. Marxists out there recognize that. They figured out how to infiltrate and brainwash these people. Nobody knows their history. Now it has a chance to repeat itself. Key dates, July 6th through the 15th, 1938. That was the Refugee Conference in Evian. February 9th, 1939 was a limited refugee bill proposed to the U.S. Congress. The Wagner-Rogers Refugee Aid Bill is introduced to the U.S. By Senator Robert F. Wagner, a Democrat of New York. The bill calls for the admission to the United States of 20,000 German refugee children under the age of 14 over the next 2 years. In addition to immigration normally permitted, the bill would be introduced in the House of Representatives by Edith Norris Rogers, a Republican of Massachusetts. 5 days later, charity organizations across the country publicize the plight of German refugee children in an attempt to gain support for the bill. However, organizations favoring restrictive immigration strongly oppose the bill and claim that the refugee children would deprive America children of aid. After several months of debate, the bill is defeated in the committee. The bill would have provided refugee for thousands of German Jewish children that probably died. All right. So great job there. 1939, and that was sarcasm for those who don't know. 1939, May, British government restricts immigration into Palestine. An Arab-Palestinian revolt against the British mandate in Palestine in 1936, and continuing Arab unrest, especially regarding the status of Jews in Palestine, leads to a decisive change in British policy in the Middle East. In the White Paper of 1939, the British government announces its policies on the future status of Palestine. The British reject the establishment of an independent Jewish state and severely restrict future Jewish immigration into Palestine. In response to the British policy, illegal immigration of Jewish refugees to Palestine increases. The British intercept the illegal immigrants and intern them in camps. During the war, there is no attempt to relax the policy, and restrictions on Jewish immigration remain in force until Israel is actually created in 1948. All right, folks? So everybody is hurting the Jews. Everybody's scared to act. Everybody's scared to do anything about anything. Remember, Britain had the mandate over there at that point, and Palestine existed in place of the rightful homeland of the Jews, Israel. All right. And that had to be corrected in 1948. A bunch of people bitch and moan about it. And the left has become the party of Palestine. The right has become the party of Israel. The left, the Democrats, they are the party of anti-Semites. If you are a Jew, if you love Jews and you are a Democrat and you are on the left, you should do some research about what your party stands for now, because I'm going to guess you haven't read the pamphlet in about 30 friggin' years. All right. Sorry, not sorry. Sorry, not sorry. This stuff happened. All right, this stuff happened, and we're in a very weird time where this stuff could happen again. It just takes a couple crazy people making a couple crazy bad decisions, and boom, we're here. Plain and simple. Come on, you think Boris Johnson's going to speak up against Americans and turning other Americans? Come on. No, it's not going to happen. We had the Voyage of St. Louis after this, all right? This is a big deal, too. This is Jews trying to escape. This is more examples to show you what happens when other countries, other places are too scared to act. All right. And we're in a position where companies, businesses, and states are too scared to act. And what's happening? People on the right are being persecuted more and more. The Voyage of St. Louis, a German ocean liner, dramatically highlights the difficulties faced by many people trying to escape Nazi terror. In May 1939, 937 passengers, mostly Jewish refugees, all right? Mostly Jewish refugees. They left Hamburg, Germany, going to Cuba. All right, trying to go anywhere they could. Most of them planned eventually to emigrate to the United States. They were on a waiting list for admission, and all the passengers held landing certificates. They had passports, all right? They had their papers to go to Cuba, all right? They had their papers permitting them entry legally into Cuba. But when they reached the port of Havana, the president of Cuba refused to honor the documents. Nobody wanted a piece of Adolf Hitler. Nobody wanted a piece of the German government, just like nobody wants a piece of the American. Or what happens when the American government, run by lefties, years from now after they've beat down capitalism and destroyed our value system? What happens in 2036, 2044, when they start putting American citizens in camps? What country in their right mind would ever stand up to the most powerful country in America, the United States? Nobody. We are done by then. We are screwed by then, ladies and gentlemen, and this planet will become a miserable ball of death, destruction, and mud, blood, sweat, tears, and tragedy. More than it is so now, ladies and gentlemen, because there will be no beacon of hope for anybody to run to after that point going forward for eternity. All right? So pay attention to the signs. Pay attention to the damn signs. Again, how is this any different than stuff happening now in the digital space? It's not. After the ship left the Havana harbor, it sailed close to Florida. So close, in fact, the passengers, imagine that. Imagine your freedom there. The passengers could see the lights of Miami. And this is nothing like what's happening, by the way, with drug dealers and rapists and gang members that flood into our countries. Are there people in South American countries that are being persecuted? Sure. Sure there are. And do they deserve help? Sure. And there's a process for that. All right. But within our own walls, within our own country, within our own borders, 80 million Americans are being persecuted and oppressed. 80 million Americans are unsure of their future. 80 million Americans are worried for their children and their grandchildren's safety. 80 million Americans are wondering how they're going to put food on the table when the left removes our ability to use our credit cards, to go to the bank, to go get groceries. So you tell me why the hell I should give a crap about Guatemala when 80 million of my brothers and sisters are getting fucked right here in America. You tell me why I can't post on Twitter. You tell me why I don't have the same right as my neighbor who worships Joe Biden. That's a problem. That's a problem, all right? That's where we are. That's where we are, and that's the proof that this is where we could be headed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so keep your mouths open. Keep your mouths open, all right? They couldn't find freedom. The captain appealed for help from the United States. The Coast Guard patrolled the waters so that passengers couldn't escape to Florida without being arrested. So they turned back to Europe. They stopped in Belgium and the Netherlands and England and France. All those places admitted passengers. But within months, the Germans overran Western Europe. All right? Hundreds of the passengers who disembarked Belgium, all right, who got off in the Netherlands, who ended up in France. It didn't matter. They were so close, yet they died in a gas chamber. They starved to death. They were beaten to death in a Nazi concentration camp. They became part of the final solution. They were built back better, according to Adolf Hitler, ladies and gentlemen. So pay close attention when the government promises you the world. All right, for your quiet and silent obedience, because this is where we head. All right, May 13th, 1939. All right, May 13th. It's February 14th right now. Happy Valentine's Day, by the way. Hugs and kisses. Listen, May 13th, 1939. All right, 937 Jewish refugees flee Nazi Germany. They sail for Havana. They get fucked at every port. May 27th, 1939, the Cuban president screws them over. June 6th, all right, think about this. They departed. It took them that long from May 13th to May 27th to get to Cuba, only to be told to go screw themselves, all right? June 6th, they sit there till June 6th, 1939. The refugees, they abandon hope. They abandon all hope, and they sail for Europe, all right? Let's listen to some of the numbers. After failing to dock in Cuba and the United States, the St. Louis is forced to return to Europe. All right, some other countries take the refugees. Belgium takes 214, the Netherlands 181, Great Britain 287, and France 224. All right. On June 17th, 1939, the St. Louis docks in Antwerp, Belgium, and the passengers are taken to their countries of refuge. Hundreds of passengers, hundreds, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, children, ladies and gentlemen. Hundreds who disembarked in Belgium, the Netherlands, and France were killed by the Nazis after those countries were taken over and they were sent to concentration camps or merely just beaten to death in their own homes or shot in the face. I mean, that's the whole thing about this that really sickens me. Everybody's such a wimp, such a little pussy. Sorry to go down that road. I know I'm trying, but these 3 episodes, this Gina and the Jews series that I'm doing, it's real pissing me off. So I'm cursing a little bit. You're going to have to deal with it. Pisses me off. It's disgusting stuff, but this stuff that's happening right now, again, I'll say it, do Republicans have to die in large numbers? Does there have to be a genocide already for us to be allowed to talk about this? Are you that much wimps, cowards, little bitches that you can't talk about the truth of history that happened and compare it to things that happen now? Have we lost our ability to ration and reason, to be scientists and not emotionalists? And I fear, at least for the left, I fear that the answer to that question is yes. They've at least lost that ability. Emotion and science are the same for the Democrat, ladies and gentlemen. They're the same. Let's move on to the last article here. All right. There's plenty of other history that happened during the Holocaust, and I could get into gruesome detail, but I really wanted to go through this series of articles here. Right. Look on the right here. All right. On the right here, they have Holocaust, a learning site for students, Nazi rule, the final solution, the camp system, rescue and resistance. We could do a whole series on that. If you want to see some of that in a format like this, let me know in the comment section below or email me directly, jameslane@AmericanReveille.com. But I thought that it was important for what we're talking about to do the series of articles for Jews in pre-war Germany. All right. I wanted to get a feel across. I wanted you to know the emotion, know the heart and the heartache of these people and have a basis to compare to what's happening today, because it is similar. I don't care what anybody tells you. They're lying. It's similar. It is similar. You are not crazy. All right. You're not. Locating the victims. This is the last article. All right. It's the last one. We're getting about an hour like the last 2 were, and then we're going to wrap it up. The Germans and their collaborators, they used paper records and local knowledge to identify Jews to be rounded up or killed. Records included those created by Jewish communities of their members, parish records of Protestant and Catholic churches for the converted Jews, government tax records, police records, including registries of Jews compiled by local collaborating police. How many of you have registered Republican? How many of you have made a social media post pro-Trump? You know what I'm talking about. Those are records too. In both Germany and occupied countries, Nazi officials required Jews to identify themselves as Jewish, and many complied, fearing the consequences if they did not. In many countries occupied by or allied with Germany during World War II, local citizens often showed authorities where their Jewish neighbors lived if they did not themselves help round them up. Jews in hiding everywhere lived in constant fear of being identified and denounced to officials by individuals in exchange for money and rewards, in exchange for likes and shares, in exchange for retweets, in exchange for DMs from prominent people, interviews with prominent people, money, fame, fortune, wealth. All you have to do is speak with the snake tongue, lie about your neighbor, and destroy their friends, family, and livelihood. Again, how is that different than what's happening digitally? It is not. The location and identification of Nazi victims did not rely on modern technology, as sometimes claimed in the popular media. It's true that the punch card machines produced by the Hollerith machine, a subsidiary of IBM, were used in Nazi Germany, as in the United States and many Western European countries in the 20s and 30s, for processing and sorting information on households that had been gathered by census workers from door-to-door work. Aggregated census data processed by the Hollerith machines could provide the Nazi government with information on how many Jews lived in a particular Jewish city, since the census of 1939 included data on race, identifying who was a Jew as defined by the Nuremberg laws. All right. You filled out the census. You know what's on it. How is this any different? How is this a stretch of the imagination? You tell us we're protected by the Constitution, yet on live television you tear the Constitution in half and shit on all our values, lefties. So how are we supposed to feel like we're safe and protected? We don't. That's the truth. That's the answer. Many of us are in fear already. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Americans on the right, I'm sorry if you haven't heard this yet, lefties, but it's the truth, are living in fear of you. Backed into a corner, ladies and gentlemen, backed into a corner. Technology, even for such limited purposes as census tabulations, however, would not have been found in economically less developed German-occupied Eastern Europe, where the vast majority of Jews lived. About 75%, or 4.5 million of the 6 million Jews in the Holocaust lived in Poland, the Baltics, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and the Soviet Union, in many cases, in mostly Jewish communities readily located by the Germans and their collaborators. Let me teach you something. When they talk about Eastern European Jews, okay? Eastern Europe was not developed. When you talk about flyover states in the United States, rural areas, that is Eastern European Jews, all right? So when they rounded up all these people that nobody heard about or cared about, they went to the flyover states first, you dumbasses. And then when they showed up in the big places, that's when people started to pay attention. All right. 4.5 million of the 6 million Jews were killed in the flyover countries, ladies and gentlemen. So again, tell me, if you live in New York City, how are you going to know what happens in Alabama? Oh, wait, social media, right? They've already proven that they censor that. Folks, again, the point that I'm proving with all of this again and again and again is how disgusting and wrong it was for Gina Carano to be canceled. I'm probably saying her name wrong. Carano to be canceled. All right. She is absolutely in the right. And when you can cancel, fire, and destroy people for bringing to the attention of Americans what's happening to people, all right, in this country, what could be happening, what's on the way, for worrying about something, for being honest, for talking about voter ID, how disgusting and wrong it is for people who live in a bubble, who are so wealthy, so rich, so out of touch, so elite, that this doesn't exist in their world. You can't talk about this because, ladies and gentlemen, behind the golden gates of their communities, this isn't real. But for people like you and me with families and livelihoods, we risk it every day. If my employer found out that I did this podcast, I'd be fired tomorrow, and then my children wouldn't eat. I'd lose this business and everything would fall apart. How many of us little people have to be silenced and destroyed before people pay attention? How many? How much blood will have to be spilled against people on the right before everyone on the right comes together and opens their mouths? It doesn't have to get to this point. But we're already digitally very, very close to this, very, very close to this. And we feel persecuted. We are oppressed. Just because Nancy Pelosi says that we're not doesn't make it true. Okay? So if you're a lefty and you're listening to this, all right, I don't give a crap what denial you live in. Denial's not just a river in Egypt. I'm telling you right now, your team is oppressing people. They're doing to people what the Nazis were doing to people. They're doing to people what slave masters did to people. They're doing to people what people do when they believe the other people are lower, beneath them, below them, inferior. They are completing, they are acting in complete bigotry, complete oppression, complete disassociation, complete minimization of an entire group of people in the United States of America. All right? If you are on the left and you are listening to this, open your eyes and ears, because you are doing and standing for the exact thing that you believe you are fighting against. Plain and simple. Hollerith machine technology was introduced at the headquarters of the concentration camp system in 1942. It was used there not to locate and identify people to be killed, because this was done by the paper records. It was done as a way of managing and tracking the data on the living prisoners. This was particularly, I can't even say that word today. It was particularly true with regard to their professional and occupational skills, some of which the Germans needed to support their war production. For example, Hollerith technology could inform the SS on the availability of tailors throughout the concentration camp system to enable camp administrators to get tailors where they were needed the most. And sometimes those people lived longer than others because they had a skill set. God forbid you get thrown in a concentration camp and you can't do something with your hands. They say learn to code, huh? I wonder if they'll need coders in the concentration camps in 10 years. Listen, this is scary stuff. It's real hard-hitting stuff. Stuff nobody wants to talk about, nobody wants to hear, but it needs to be discussed. God forbid we ever forget the past, good or bad, because history has proven that when we destroy the past, we are doomed to repeat it. The key dates, April 7th, 1933, Jews are identified and removed from all government posts. All right? 5 years later, Jews are required to assume a Jewish name and have their passports stamped with a J. All right? 5 years later again, 1941, there's a badge system introduced that identifies the Jews. This is happening in planned increments. This is coordinated. Take a look at what's happening now. All right? They're taking advantage of a culture brainwashed for instant gratification while all the people running the show have long-term plans. And they're all betting on the fact that you can't see them because you're too busy clicking on clickbait. Ladies and gentlemen, Gina Carano, she's innocent. We're all innocent. There is no unity because the left doesn't actually want it. What the left wants to do is rule. They want unity amongst themselves and silence amongst the right. And if we stay silent, this happens. Every couple years, it just keeps getting worse and worse. The vice grip closes, the anaconda squeezes, the gable grip gets tighter, and the oxygen is cut off, and we slowly suffocate until we find ourselves with a badge of identification, wearing striped suits, making big rocks into little rocks, going, damn, Mike, I really didn't think it would happen this fast. Ladies and gentlemen, don't ever close your mouth. Don't you ever close your mouths. Do me a favor, all right? This is where we're going to end it. This is where we're going to end it, guys. It was important that we went through this information. It was important that you learned about Jewish history. But more importantly, it's important that we gave so much overwhelming evidence that Gina Carano is innocent, that she did the right thing, that her statement was factual, correct, and that people should be speaking more statements like this. That was important. That was the goal here. That's what you should be getting out of this, and you should be spreading this around. Share it, talk about it, comment on it, like it. All right, we're being cut off everywhere. So however you can get this workaround, please get it out. Get it out for me, guys. I need your help. All right, whether that's through following, notifying, and sharing, whether that's by talking about it at your local church, your local synagogue, whether it's talking to other parents about it, friends, family, brothers, sisters, sons, daughters. I'm really trying to make a difference here with this show, guys. And big tech is fighting us every step of the way, fighting the hell out of us. All right. So please, please, please spread the word. www.americanreveille.com. We're still upgrading the website, doing a lot of things. You can find all of our main material there. You can email me directly, James Lane at americanreveille.com. That's REVEILLE.com. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, I need that 5-star rating. I need that written review. I need you to let people know about the American Reveille. Trust me. All right. The more people review and rate and talk about it, the more people Apple puts this in front of their face. They get to see it. They get to wake up. They get armed with the tools that they need to fight back. All right, guys, I really need your help. I need your help in this. We're trying to make a difference. All right, ladies and gentlemen. And if you'd like to support us and donate in any way, you can go to www.americanreveille.com. There's a tab there that says support us. We greatly appreciate it. We reinvested in the company. We're still working through our business plan and finding ways around the social media censorship. And we will be pitching investors soon with our full-fledged business plan, trying to get a hold of $1 to $1.5 million so that we can explode nationally. It's not just a podcast, guys. It's a podcast because I use this as the main entertainment platform to get out what we're talking about to you. But folks, I own American Reveille LLC, and that's going to be a very large company encompassing many podcasts, many blogs, many articles, many forms of entertainment in the future. So stay tuned and get ready for some awesome surprises coming up, folks. All right, that's Gina and the Jews 3. I'm going to end this series of Gina and the Jews with Gina and the Jews 3, the return of the Gentile, ladies and gentlemen. And we will move forward from here, all right? Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Have an awesome Sunday.